Race number 2 about to get underway here at Silverstone with Rushworth and Sawley back on row 1, Ben Leach and Christian Lyon row 2, then it's Phil Wright and Martin Ward ahead of Roger Vella and Neil Stringfellow. Alistair Camp, 2 times winner this year, is down on the 5th row with our Class C winner from race 1, Michael Winkworth. Well, drier conditions this time around, which is good news. The cars will now be able to go an awful lot more quickly and possibly we'll see some closer racing because of it, because in the slippery conditions I think a lot of the drivers were very much just trying to get to the end of the race in one piece. This time around they'll really be able to go for it. The lights go out, and for the second time this weekend we're away, and for the second time this weekend it's not a great start from pole for Ben Rushworth. Diving into the race leader Steve Sawley, and look at that, coming up the inside line in the green car. It's been another really good start there for Christian Lyon, who we heard saying to Anthony after race 1 had a car that was better set up for the wet conditions. Well, he's made a really good start here in the dry conditions of race number 2, so let's see whether or not he can keep it up. He's side by side down towards the braking zone at Village there, and trying to go right around the outside. A few cars running even wider though as they get into the braking zone, but they are all safely through this time. There's Mac McCarthy in his Honda Civic a bit further back. He is second place in the Class C Championship going into this race as they make their way down onto the back straight for the first time of asking, and it's another really good start for Steve Sawley to get into the race lead. Now, can he hang on to it this time? We saw in race 1 that maybe the Integra of Ben Rushworth was a bit better suited to the wet conditions. Well, it's bone dry out there now, and you can see visibly how much more quickly they're able to attack the circuit. These are some of the fastest cars that race on the 750 Motor Club package, and we're really seeing them at full speed now as they drop down towards Vale. Rushworth looks to the outside, decides better of it, so Steve Sawley for the second time is going to lead the opening lap of the race, but once Rushworth got through in the first race, which was about a third of the way through, he really never looked back. So Steve Sawley will be hoping that he can run his big championship rival a bit closer this time around. Generally speaking, when Rushworth hasn't finished, it's been Sawley that's been able to pick up the pieces and take the victories. This is the fight for 4th place though, and Alistair Camp, who really did struggle in the wet conditions before in race number 1. Alistair Camp finished that race down in 9th place. Well, the double race victor from the first rounds back at Brands Hatch, the last time he covered the championship at the start of the season, he's looking now to try and make hay whilst the sun doesn't shine, but at least the rain's not coming down. Oh, that was a real lunge up the inside there. That was one of the Peugeots, wasn't it? I think Chris Southcott, the white and orange car, diving up the inside. Couldn't get the car stopped though, so it gives the place back away again on the exit of the corner. But Alistair Camp there, just in front of the battle between Ben Leach and behind him Phil Wright, the blue and grey car. Look at the cars running very wide coming out of Chapel. That's very, very wayward driving out of that corner as they try and get on the power as early as possible down the Hanger Straight. Side by side though here with on the outside line Alistair Camp, on the inside line is Ben Leach, and Leach will go through, and so too will Phil Wright. So 2 up, 2 down for Alistair Camp, unfortunately. The race started off well, but he's now back down into 6th position. This though is the fight for the race lead, and this is exactly how we saw Rushworth get past Sawley in race 1 round the outside at Club, but in the dry that is no longer the grippiest part of the circuit, so he has to think of another alternative opportunity to get through. Closes in down towards Abbey Corner, but it's a brave man who throws it up the inside there. You don't really do much braking into the first turn here on the international circuit, so it makes more sense to do what Rushworth just did, get a good exit from the corner and try to get up the inside down towards Village. He's got the inside line, but Sawley's late on the brakes, sideways into the corner, and Steve Sawley just can't get the car stopped. Rushworth goes through and takes over the race lead. Well, ironically, it took him even less time in race number 2 to hit the front than it did in the first race. Sawley, though, pushing on to try and stay with him, as well he might, because we heard that that Ben actually ran into a small mechanical issue towards the end of race number 1, where he had some fluid spilling out onto the rear tyres. So if Sawley can keep applying the pressure, you never know, it could still come back to him. As they head down towards Stowe Corner once again, Steve Sawley then now has lost the lead. Can he stay with Ben Rushworth a little bit more comprehensively than he did in the earlier race? Down towards the braking zone at Vale they go. Rushworth in the Integra, a very well sorted car. It's been very fragile at times, but when it's been on song, he's hard to beat. He won both races at Croft in fairly dominant fashion earlier on this season, and had a race victory by nearly 14 seconds at Cadwell Park in the opening race, but that unfortunately was followed by a non-finish in race 2. That was last time out. Now, he really can't afford the same sort of thing to happen this weekend at Silverstone. He's won the first race, he could do with doubling up to further establish his championship lead. There's the fight for third position, the red Civic, which made a good start in race 1, remember, Martin Ward, before slipping backwards slightly. He's still in third at the moment, with Ben Leach closing in. And then here are some of the battles with some of the lower powered cars running a bit further down the order, and we've got a mix of Class B and C machines here. The number 11 car is Ian Williamson, who started 16th in the opening race in his Class C Saxo. There's Dawn Boyd, second in Class B points, but losing further ground, unfortunately, to the championship leader, Rodron Vella. Actually haven't seen in this race, but I'm assuming is still running inside the top 10, as he did in race 1, where he finished 5th place overall, in fact, did Rodron. He was the second highest placed Class B car. Phil Wright, of course, won Class B in race 1 and is leading Class B again in the early stages of race 2. On the Saxos there, that's Robert Fagg trying to challenge Dawn Boyd as they go down the straight. Rob Fagg is in Class C, and side by side just in front of them as Ian Williamson loses a position there to the significantly faster Fiesta of Leon Shepherd. Leon Shepherd running in Class B, of course, and Williamson in Class C. So Shepherd works his way through pretty easily, drops down the hill towards Vale. He's now in clean air, and he'll try to bridge that gap to the cars in his own class. They're running a bit further up the order. Battles right the way down the order, though, as ever in the hot hatch races. We've got more dicing going on here. That's the number 43 Citroen Saxo. Oh, and contact sideways there. That was Matt McCarthy, who got into the side of David Sadowski, and Sadowski rotates, or half rotates, and then gets going again. I don't think there's any significant damage done to either car, but McCarthy saw the gap up the inside, but as is so often the case down at Vale, the gap closes, and once you're committed to the inside line, you can't really get out of it. So a little bit of a love tap there, no real damage done, but David Sadowski will not have appreciated that, I'm sure. He's running in the Class B Civic Type R, whereas Matt McCarthy is actually second place in the Class C Championship points, behind Michael Winkworth. Well, Winkworth took another class victory in race number 1, and McCarthy didn't finish, so that gap has now gone out again. He's getting on for 25 points or so between the top two now. Back down the hangar straight goes this terrific midfield scrap. There's always something going on in these hot hatch races with 3 different classes, great variety of car as well. It's hard to imagine that a couple of years ago this series didn't even exist, and now here it is with near capacity entry. And great competition across all 3 of the classes. Ben Rushworth and Steve Sawley may have been dominating things to an extent in Class A and for the overall race victories, but we've also had wins this year for Alistair Camp, for Marcus Ward, 2 meetings ago at Pembrey down in Wales, although Marcus not with us this weekend at Silverstone, unfortunately. I'd like to see him back in the championship because he's proven himself to be a front runner. It's number 50 car of Ben Leach working his way through Village and the Link, where they leave the Grand Prix circuit downhill here into the tricky right-hander at Chapel, and then behind him, I think that was a change, wasn't it, because that looked like Phil Wright going ahead of Martin Ward. So Martin Ward, again, a bit like we saw in race 1, gets a good start, and he's pretty good on cold tyres on the opening lap, but then maybe just doesn't quite have the pace of some of the cars around him, just drops down the order slightly as the race goes on. They've just put a lap on the little Citroen C2 of Paul Cockerell. It's a car that we haven't seen much of. Don't see many Citroen C2s out on the racetracks, so good to see a fine example of one here this weekend. It may be running towards the back of its class, but nonetheless good to have it here. Now, this Phil Wright and Martin Ward battle, is it over? Can Martin fight back? It doesn't look like it. He's starting to drop back a little bit now in the Jim Ward Motors liveried car, and Ward has no pressure from behind, at least, so he's in for a fairly quiet race, but I'm sure he'd rather be in the thick of the top 5 battles. Just behind, we can see Christian Lyon now suffering, I think, a little bit more with the dry conditions, but Alistair Camp behind him there in the green Fiesta, that I really thought would do well in the dry conditions. The Tom Bell Racing Fiesta may have struggled in the slippery conditions, as I mentioned in race 1. It's quite stiffly sprung, it's very powerful, that car, but really in the dry, this circuit should suit it perfectly. That's one of the cars that, along with another car that was driven at the time by Tom Bell himself, they were the cars that were sort of dominating this championship in its infancy, and it just goes to show how much things have come on, that all of a sudden it's struggling to hold on to a top 10 position. So Alistair Camp not having things all his own way here. There may of course be some sort of underlying issue with the car. He did win both of those opening races at Brands Hatch, although the first of those races was a near photo finish with Steve Sawley, so even then he didn't have it easy. But that was around the very tight and technical Brands Hatch Indy circuit. We sort of suspected that this would be one of the best circuits for the Fiesta, because it's the exact opposite of Brands Hatch. It's got lots of long straights, long fast-flowing corners that really should suit the car quite well, but that doesn't appear to be the case. He is, though, starting to apply the pressure now to Lyon again as they drop down into Village. Christian Lyon, our Class B victor in the opening race, of course. He was third in Class B, I beg your pardon. Finished 6th place overall. Had a really, really storming drive up the order. Not quite the same sort of success story today. Back down the Hanger Straight they go underneath the circuit access bridge, and we now see that actually that Fiesta is, if anything, losing ground in a straight line. Closing in under braking. Alistair Camp very, very lively. We can see just how jittery the car is there. It's still very stiffly sprung at the rear. You can see it hopping and bouncing its way through the corner. It doesn't look good, but it goes quite quickly. It may be an unorthodox way to set up the car, but it certainly makes it very, very reactive. It's very... you can place the car pretty well around the track. It's just a bit twitchy whilst you're doing it. Right, another battle going on here further back. That's the 28 Citroen Saxo of Robert Fagg, trying to find a way past Alex Tate in the 163 car. Alex Tate, who races this car in multiple championships and series across the country, and is going on to his final lap now, but still under quite a lot of pressure here in this midfield battle that never did calm down. There's been contact, in fact, in the background there between one of the Peugeots and one of the Saxos. That's the 43 Saxo, Chris Woods up the inside, and one of the Peugeots on the outside line there, losing the position, I believe, on the way out of Club Corner. But there, Steve Sawley, who works his way through Abbey Corner. Now, Steve Sawley is in the lead of the race. Where is Ben Rushworth? Ben Rushworth, we're hearing, has pulled into retirement. So Steve Sawley, whilst we've been focusing on the battles in the midfield, is your race leader. So it's happened again, would you believe, for Ben Rushworth. He wins the first race, and then it all goes wrong in race 2. Now, this, by my reckoning, means that Steve Sawley, as long as he can survive this last half a lap, and that's by no means guaranteed because he's got all of this traffic to deal with in front of him, but if he can survive the last half a lap, he could move through into the championship lead again, which he shared with Ben Rushworth arriving here at Silverstone. Well, a win and a second place for Sawley compared to a win and a non-finish for Rushworth should see Sawley move back in front. It's been a really, really good drive this, though, from the Honda Civic driver. He drops down in towards Vale. He's just picking his way past the last couple of back markers, and it looks as though he's going to come home victorious, is Steve Sawley, for the third time this year. He's only one win behind Ben Rushworth, but he's ahead of him in the points because his championship rival has a non-finish, while Steve takes the race victory. So another twist in the story of the Royal Purple Hot Hatch Championship fight this year. Steve sees Steve Sawley steal the advantage as we leave Silverstone and head to Donington Park for the rerun, essentially, of the races that were cancelled at the start of the year due to the adverse weather. So Steve Sawley it is with the victory, from Ben Leach in second and Phil Wright in third. Martin Ward comes home in fourth position ahead of Christian Lyon, then Alistair Camp, Neil Stringfellow, Leon Shepherd, Ian Williamson, and Dawn Boyd, a much improved result that time around, 14th in race 1, 10th in race 2. The class winners, Class A of course for Steve Sawley, Class B for Phil Wright, and it is Ian Williamson this time who takes the Class C victory. We had quite a lot of retirements though. Rushworth a non-finisher, Matt McCarthy excluded for that contact, whilst there were several non-starters as well, who unfortunately never even got into that race.
Steve, what a drive, scrapping all the way. Took the win off Ben. Gotta be happy.
Oh, very happy. We all have a bit of bad luck. I mean, bad luck at the beginning of the season, but the first race, Ben was leaking oil out. That's why we couldn't get no grip, I think. It was wet. We thought, well, it can't be that slippy. And then it took us a few laps there to get the oil off the tyres. I was scrapping with Ben the first few laps. He seemed to get a gap, and we got it back. And then obviously Ben had a problem down the back. So I think a drive shaft or a gearbox, but I'll take the win. We all have good luck and bad luck, so it's nice to get a bit good luck and get a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a bit about the car. It's fantastically prepared, Honda Civic. What have you done to it to get it this pacing?
Well, it's all thanks to Adam and Simon, Adam Priestman and Simon Dawes. K20, clockwise motion throttle bodies, yellow speed suspension, yellow speed brakes, and a good setup, and it's working. Could do a little bit more grip. Try and maybe go to 17s, we're on 15s, which we struggle for. Ben's gone to 17s and he just seemed to have a bit more grunt out the corners. Yeah. I tried some bigger wheels this morning, but they didn't work, so That's the only thing we lack in a bit of grip. But apart from that, I can't fault the little cats. It's a big bag of fun for an old guy like me.
Well, it's fantastic to watch. You obviously enjoyed it. Go and enjoy the
We're in
win.
the championship now, so good.
Oh, brilliant, well done.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Firstly, congratulations, class win, and it's beautifully prepared. Citroen Saxo, talk us through it. You've got to be happy.
Yeah, over the moon. First win. We've been doing it a little while. We've managed to get 2 podiums at the beginning of the season, and we've had some bad luck with the car. So we're back for Silverstone to get a second and then a first. Absolutely over the moon.
And it's been tricky conditions today. Weather's been changeable. What was going through your mind when you're setting the car up?
Well, race 1 was very slippery, and it didn't help with one of the boys putting down some oil, which made it even more interesting. But great conditions, absolutely brilliant. And then this afternoon it's warmed up a little bit as best it can at Silverstone, and it was just about putting my foot down and making a gap between myself and second and bring it home.
Well done.
Thank you very much.